What is up everybody, it's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and in this video we will be talking about whether fans of Dragon Ball Z who might have grown up with the show or even gotten into anime because of DBZ should bother watching Dragon Ball Super, which is the ongoing sequel to Dragon Ball Z that premiered almost 20 years after Dragon Ball Z finished airing. I decided to make this video because I am one of the people who grew up watching Dragon Ball Z back in the early 2000s when the show finally made its way to North America. And as a huge DBZ fan, I was very skeptical about Dragon Ball Super at first. In fact, I didn't watch it for a long time after it started airing because I was afraid that the show would somehow ruin my childhood memories. But about a year after it first started airing, I finally decided to catch up on Dragon Ball Super, and now I'm going to tell you whether Dragon Ball Super is worth watching in my opinion. We made a poll on our Twitter about what type of Dragon Ball content you want to see us make here on the channel, and this topic of Dragon Ball Z versus Dragon Ball Super won the last poll, so that is why I'm making this video for you guys. If you want to take part in future polls to help us decide what type of videos to make next, you can follow us on Twitter, and we are also posting daily on Instagram at Anime Uproar for both. Links are in the description. If you end up enjoying this video and you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you to Rifti Beats for the background music. He makes cool remixes of anime soundtracks, including Dragon Ball music. You can check out his channel, link in the description. Now, the question of whether a fan of Dragon Ball Z will enjoy Dragon Ball Super is a subjective one. If you watched Dragon Ball Z as a child and liked it, but now that you've gotten older, you only enjoy mature and serious anime, movies, TV shows, and so on, then Dragon Ball Super is probably not for you. Dragon Ball Super has its serious moments, just like Dragon Ball Z did, but overall, it is an action anime that focuses on fighting and adventure. If you're looking for a deeply philosophical anime that will make you think about the meaning of life, Dragon Ball Super is not the perfect choice. However, Dragon Ball Super does offer 4 unique things that I think a fan of Dragon Ball Z will appreciate. Number 1 is world building. If you loved the unique and interesting world of Dragon Ball Z, including the incredible abilities that the characters possess and the universe that the story takes place in, then Dragon Ball Super does have a lot to offer. In Dragon Ball Super, we learn a lot more about the universe of Dragon Ball, and not just one universe. We learn that there are multiple universes that exist, and that the universe we know from Dragon Ball Z is just one of those universes. In Dragon Ball Super, we get to explore and learn more about not just Universe 7 where the Z fighters come from, but also the other universes and the complex governing structure that rules over these universes. And this also includes a wide variety of gods, angels, and other divine beings. Speaking of which, in Dragon Ball Super we meet a huge number of new and interesting characters from the different universes and beyond. And this really adds to the complexity and nuance of the world of Dragon Ball. In Dragon Ball Super, it's not just a case of the same heroes fighting a new villain in each arc and then moving on. Instead, we meet a whole bunch of new and unique characters, some good, some evil, and some who are in between those two extremes. If you liked the world of Dragon Ball Z and you're interested in seeing new planets, new characters of different species and races, new divine beings, new and unique abilities and powers, then you should strongly consider watching Dragon Ball Super. Whether or not you like the world of Dragon Ball Z, as a fan of the series, you definitely like the characters that we meet along the way, at least some of them anyway. If you've been wondering what happens to Goku, Gohan, Vegeta and Bulma, Krillin and Android 18 and everybody else after the Kid Buu saga, Dragon Ball Super reveals this in great detail. You get to see how the relationships between the characters develop, how they start and grow their families, what they do with their lives, how they continue to interact with each other, and so on. Just to give you one example, I personally really enjoyed seeing how Vegeta and Gohan have developed into family men who care deeply for their wives and children. And I love seeing these characters that I've known since childhood grow, evolve, and develop new relationships with each other. There is of course a lot of humor involved here, like in the relationship between Bulma and Vegeta for example, and I really enjoyed that comedic element as well. When I was first watching Dragon Ball Z as a kid, my favorite character in the whole show was Future Trunks. I loved how after the epic Frieza saga on Namek, where Goku struggled for so long to defeat Frieza, Future Trunks just swoops in and annihilates Frieza and his father in mere seconds. I also loved how Future Trunks came from a very dark timeline where he developed into a much different person than he would have if he had lived in the present timeline. And of course, I appreciated Future Trunks' sense of fashion, including his badass jacket and sword. Probably the biggest reason why I decided to finally give Dragon Ball Super a chance was when I heard that Future Trunks comes back in the series and that we get to learn more about the future timeline. And I have to say, I loved learning more about Trunks and seeing the development of his relationship with characters in the present timeline, especially his relationship with Vegeta and Gohan. This is one of the highlights of Dragon Ball Super for me, and if you are one of the people who love the main characters in Dragon Ball Z and you are curious to see what happens to them next and how their relationships develop, Dragon Ball Super is definitely worth your time in my opinion. Number 3 is pacing and battle strategy. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you've got to be a fan of action and epic battles between incredibly strong opponents, and Dragon Ball Super definitely delivers on this aspect of the franchise. We meet new, insanely powerful characters, and this forces our heroes to get stronger in order to defeat them, and in this sense there are many similarities to Dragon Ball Z. However, there are a few interesting developments that I see in Dragon Ball Super. For one, the pacing is not nearly as slow as the original Dragon Ball Z, in which a single fight could take nearly 20 episodes, and this was especially hard to deal with when you were watching the episodes weekly on TV. In 2009, Dragon Ball Z Kai was released, and it cut out a lot of the slow pacing and the filler, and I think Dragon Ball Super also does a pretty good job of keeping a fast pace and limiting the filler to a reasonable extent. There is definitely some filler, but I didn't find it to be as bad as something like the Garlic Jr. saga in Dragon Ball Z, and most fights, even the epic ones, last 2 or 3 episodes, not 10 or 20. Now, some may disagree with me on this, and that's totally cool, but in my opinion, Dragon Ball Super at certain times has a bigger focus on battle strategy than Dragon Ball Z, especially once the big Tournament of Power arc gets going, rather than just introducing new, more powerful villains, which in turn inspires everyone to attain a higher power level in order to defeat them with pure force. Dragon Ball Super introduces the concept of a tournament in which multiple teams of 10 fighters must work together to defeat the other teams and survive. This concept forces us to think about the importance of teamwork, of strategy, and of unique techniques and abilities that can allow fighters to get the better of an opponent who is much stronger than them in terms of physical power alone. Once the Tournament of Power starts, it is also difficult to tell who is the hero and who is the villain, or better yet, maybe there is no villain at all. And that is something that I appreciate. Life is often complicated and sometimes there is no clear-cut good guys and bad guys. Just people trying their best to survive, and the Tournament of Power arc does a great job of bringing this to life. If that sounds like something that you might enjoy, then Dragon Ball Super and the Universe Survival Saga in particular is definitely worth watching. And number 4 is more strong female characters. In Dragon Ball Z, we had some notable female characters, including Bulma and Chi-Chi of course, and later on in the series, Android 18, Videl, and so on. However, Dragon Ball Z was still clearly dominated by male characters, whereas in Dragon Ball Super we meet a lot more badass female characters, including female Saiyans, more strong female fighters from other universes, and powerful female deities and divine beings. I personally enjoyed seeing all of these new female characters enter the mix, especially Vados, who is probably my number 1 waifu pick in Dragon Ball, with Android 18 a close second. Let me know who your favorite female characters are in the Dragon Ball franchise, and in general tell me how you think Dragon Ball Super stacks up against Dragon Ball Z. If you've already seen Super, are you glad that you gave it a chance, and would you recommend it to your friends? Give me your thoughts down in the comments. Personally, I definitely think that Dragon Ball Super is worth your time if you enjoyed Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z. Of course, the show isn't perfect, but neither was the original Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, so I definitely think the show is worth watching and worth your time. But at the end of the day, everyone will make that decision for themselves, and we all have different tastes and opinions, and that's totally cool. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more Dragon Ball content in the future, be sure to leave a like to let me know. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram for daily updates at Anime Uproar, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!